After midnight, November 16th, 1965. Landing Zone X-ray, Nha Trang Valley, South Vietnam. The last 36 hours had seen desperate fighting in the first battle between American and NVA forces in the Vietnam War. Nerves were on edge as soldiers took cover, awaiting a nighttime attack. Then, through the silent darkness, the men heard a baritone voice begin to sing. It was the voice of the platoon's commander, Second Lieutenant Rick Rescorla. Rick was among the few who had seen action before. Born in England at the outbreak of World War II, he idolized the American troops stationed there in preparation for D-Day. As a teen, he joined the British paratroopers. At age 24, and still in search of adventure, he moved to the United States and joined the Army. Through the darkness, Rescorla risked sniper fire to scout the battlefield. All the while, he sang. The booming baritone calmed the men's nerves and steeled their courage. Rick Rescorla would be decorated with the Silver Star and Purple Heart for actions in Vietnam. His comrades remembered him as a battlefield legend, regaling each other with stories of his heroics. But as years passed, Rescorla distanced himself from his heroic past. Now an American citizen, he had seen enough battle, enough death. Though his days as a soldier were over, decades later, Rick Rescorla would become a hero once more on one of the darkest days in American history. On a cool, late summer morning, now head of security for Morgan Stanley, Rescorla readied himself for work and said goodbye to his wife. He grabbed the train to New York City, heading to his office in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. The date was September 11th, 2001. 8:46 a.m. An explosion rocked the South Tower as if New York was hit by an earthquake. Employees looked out to a sea of paper floating past the windows, then up to find the North Tower in flames. An announcement from building management came over the speakers. The building is secure. Please remain at your desks. From his office on the 44th floor, Rick Rescorla refused to listen. 8 years prior, he was on duty when terrorists detonated a bomb in the building's parking garage. He led the evacuation that day, the last man out of the building. Upon reports that a plane had hit the North Tower, Rick Rescorla grabbed a bullhorn and began the evacuation of 2,700 Morgan Stanley employees from the South Tower. 9:07 a.m. A massive blast shook the South Tower, knocking out the lights. On the 44th floor, employees struggled to keep balance as the building swayed. Many rushed to one stairwell, only to find it filled with smoke. Before panic could set in, Rescorla's voice came through the bullhorn. Stay calm. Move toward the other stairwell. Watch out for each other. Today is a day to be proud to be an American, he declared. Tomorrow, the whole world will be talking about you. Then, in his booming baritone, he began to sing. Just as in Vietnam, the old British military tunes calmed nerves and steeled courage. In a spare moment, he pulled out his phone and called his wife. I don't want you to cry, he said. I have to evacuate my people. If something happens to me, I want you to know that you made my life. 2,700 Morgan Stanley employees worked in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. All but 6 survived. A miracle on the darkest of days, made possible by a long-ago hero called to action one last time.
Ladies and gentlemen, witnesses to the valor of Rick Rescorla, please welcome Joseph Galloway, co-author of We Were Soldiers Once and Young, who witnessed Rescorla's heroism in Vietnam, joining our Morgan Stanley employees who were in the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001, and witnessed Rescorla's actions. William von SCOYOC and Bill McMahon.
Mr. Galloway, you were a witness to American Valor at the Battle of Ai Drang, which you and Hal Moore obviously wrote a landmark book, and a movie was made about it as well. But what I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, is if you could tell us about Rescorla, the soldier.
Rick came off that helicopter shaking his rifle, and he looked at this frightened battalion of survivors of a terrible massacre, and he shook that rifle and he said, "They've got us surrounded. Good, good, good. We can attack in every direction." That was Rick Rescorla. That's the one I saw. That's the one I love.
Bill and SCOYOC, you were there and you witnessed Rescorla's actions on September 11th. Tell us what you and your fellow Morgan Stanley employees saw, if you would, please.
Thanks to what Rick had done and the training he had given us, we had the ability to come out. So we had got off on the 8th floor observatory deck, began to come down, and I can hear this loud booming voice, which I had heard in several training sessions before, which I knew that to be him. And he was instructing people what to do. Okay, he was singing, and I remember hearing this and thinking, I'm going down an escalator, and I'm pretty sure he's going back up. And that's the type of person he was. So the impact he made on lives that I saw is immeasurable. Without his actions, without his valor, without his courage and leadership, so many more of us would have perished that day. I'm convinced of that. And thanks to him, because of the training that he gave me, I remember checking off the box for the last person that I had been accountable for and getting to that number of 276 and just thanking God, saying, I know I didn't have anybody that was lost here. I was entrusted with this class, and they came out. And I'm firmly convinced that never would have happened without Rick Rescorla and the training he gave us.
Bill McMahon, how should we remember Rick Rescorla?
When that plane hit, and I was on the 44th floor when it actually hit, I'd come down from the 69th, and I remember the announcement, and then I remember hearing Rick's voice saying, everything's going to be okay. Just move to a stairwell. Everything's going to be fine. And he started singing. And everybody just knew if Rick said it was going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And we walked out of that building that day, 2,700 of us, and we're alive today to talk about it. What Rick did was Rick went back into the building because he wanted to sweep it one more time to make sure that nobody was left behind. And that, to me, is who that person is. The person who was willing to give his life for all of us. And that's how, at least I will always remember the man.
A true hero. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a few of the witnesses to the valor of Colonel Rick Rescorla.